Well, you have two kinds of what we might call montage. We call it cutting. It really should be called assembly.
Editing is about rhythm.
And cut.
Today we will be exploring editing and how it has the ability to change the way films are told and how they are viewed by audiences. Oh. As you can see, this clip is very effective because it demonstrates how editing can show anything to an audience and they will believe what they see. This is down to the editing, but it is also enhanced by the actor's terror and the way she reacts to the situation. The lighting and setting also help this to look realistic. As you can see from this example, editing has such a great importance to film and television. Editing used to involve the process of an editor cutting the film with scissors and taping together the shots. This process was called linear or destructive editing because editors had to make physical cuts in the film, and this would obviously be irreversible. Nowadays, we have Adobe Premiere Pro, Apple Final Cut Pro, and Avid. In the digital editing age, it is a lot easier to edit films. In 1878, Edward Muybridge completed work in the early days of motion picture projection. He was trying to prove that a horse's feet all left the ground simultaneously. To prove his theory, Muybridge invented a zoopraxiscope, which was a lantern that projected consecutive images. The Lumiere brothers were the first to create cinema as we know it. They gathered people in a cafe and projected the motion picture onto a wall using a cinematograph. Nowadays, we still follow the tradition of going into a room with a large screen to watch films. George Méliès was in the audience at the Lumiere brothers showing of The Train Entering the Station. He was an illusionist who used pantomime and comedy mixed with camera tricks to make his films. Méliès was forced out of the industry in 1913 because of new emerging talent. Alfred Hitchcock was a motion picture director. His first real piece of work as a director was The Lodger, A Story of the London Fog. This was regarded as a successful film because it was very popular, and it was also the first film in which he made a cameo appearance. He went on to make many more films, and he earned awards and nominations for his work. Hitchcock is particularly famous for his work on editing and his work on the film Psycho. This was successful based on the way it is all cut together in a montage format to tell a story, without actually showing the murder happen. The clever montage technique used by Hitchcock in this film was an inspiration to many other editors. Walter Murch is predominantly a sound editor, and he started his editing work on The Rain People in 1969. He went on to edit sound in The Godfather Part 2.
He taught me, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
He won an Oscar for Apocalypse Now in 1979 and a double Oscar for Best Sound and Best Film Editing on The English Patient. His work showed editors that sound can be used to enhance storytelling and make it engaging for audiences. Thelma Schoonmaker is an American film editor who won an Oscar in 2004 for The Aviator. She worked with Martin Scorsese for over 40 years, which shows how directors and editors work closely together and how they can form a working partnership. A more modern film that has impacted the film industry is James Cameron's Avatar. This film used new technologies and CGI to make the characters in post-production. They used facial sensors to capture emotion in the actors' features, which helps to make the audience empathetic towards the avatars. Another successful modern-day piece is Edgar Wright's Baby Driver, which uses editing to the beat to create punchy action sequences. The editors worked on set to complete their work, and they could easily request new footage if it wasn't up to the standard that they desired. The modern film industry has more unique talent, and editors can put their mark on their work because of the endless possibilities that editing has. In editing nowadays, camera tricks are no longer used to astonish audiences. Digital editing has now taken its place, and new techniques are being used to create intriguing pieces of film. One of these techniques would be split screen. Split screen is used to duplicate an image or to create effects like this one. The technique of split screen can be achieved by using the crop tool on Premiere Pro. Another technique that is commonly used in films is parallel editing. This technique allows audiences to watch two pieces of storyline which are happening simultaneously.
Yes, it is! Come on, so if you get a bit of water, right, and you put more water in it... What the hell? You know I'm right. Why do you know? I'm denying it. Look it up online. Water is not wet. Oh my God. Are we getting into personal stuff now? I think we are. Oh, well, Gem, guys, shut up.
To make a parallel edit, the scene simply cuts from one to another, eventually ending with them coming together or impacting each other somehow. Today I will be talking to some individuals about editing and the way it affects their lives. I want to find out more about how editing affects people in a variation of ways, and therefore I will be speaking to individuals on what editing means to them.
The important thing that I found from post-production facilities houses who want editors entering the industry, mainly working on corporate and promotional stuff, they want editors who can use the software, and you need to be trying to use industry standard software. Avid at the moment is the most stable and certainly used in the broadcast industries and stuff like that. However, on more kind of corporate stuff, people are using Premiere and sometimes even Final Cut and stuff like that. The software is just a tool, so forget about that, but you do need to try and get used to using After Effects and motion graphics.
Often they say that if you notice how something's been edited, then it's not been edited very well. You know, if you notice the cuts, then the editor's not doing their job properly, because the whole idea is that you're drawing people in and getting their attention, and then they just totally buy everything you're showing them.
I really like Herzog's work. I like Martin Scorsese. I like his aesthetic and the sorts of films he's making.
We've talked a lot about, at the school, 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. I think it's a brilliant film in its own right. It's also quite cleverly edited.
I would often say that the best indicator of a good editor is actually in a documentary, where you're using a great deal of footage and constructing stories from that, and that's a real good sign of a good editor.
The story is told in the edit suite. That's where you really give the story shape, and you start to carve out, you know, the best possible story that you can make. You know, so there are times when you want to notice the edits. It may be a music video or something like that, where it's all about the rhythm and the beats and cutting and...
Attention to detail, good storytelling, conviction with the ideas, and rhythm.
You know, you want to be kind of impressed by lots of different things happening, and so that's completely valid. And then there are other films where there might be a very emotional, dramatic scene, and the last thing you want is for something to distract you, or a cut that's going to pull you out of that moment. So an editor is a very powerful, you know, a cut, just one cut can be a very, very powerful thing. So there's a lot of responsibility on the editor to use it well and use it for the right reasons.
We have explored editing from its primitive stages to modern day, and it shows that with technological advances, more and more is made possible. The media industry is constantly advancing, and it is evident from the history of editing that it changes because there's always new talent emerging. Editing will keep changing, and the way films are told will change. The history, however, will not change, and it will always remain as an influence for all editors.